Ladies and gentlemen, the NFL draft is officially here. Now, technically, it's not 8 o'clock yet on Thursday evening, but still, while you're hearing this, we are less than 24 hours away from the NFL draft. I'm excited. I'm quite sure you're excited, especially if you listen to this podcast. This is my final NFL mock draft. Now, of course, if you follow me on TikTok, I've already given my final mock draft on there. I have a few more tweaks with my YouTube one, right? But I'm going to keep everything pretty much the same. I'm going to add a few more trades. I think I have at least 4 trades in here, a few surprise picks. But nevertheless, though, this is my mock draft. I thank y'all so much for tapping in. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. You guys did a really good job of showing some love and support on the last YouTube video I dropped. Shout out to the Jaguar fans out there, man. Hopefully we get a good pick in this year's draft. But if you listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, thank you for tapping in on those platforms as well. But nevertheless, let's get right into this. Three, 2, 1. All right. So as you can see, I have my draft board pulled up, right? I'm using the mock draft central.io platform. That has been something that has been, just brought up recently. There's been a lot of platforms to use, but I'm using this one because it's a bit easier to make trades. Like I said, I have 4 trades in this mock draft. As you can see in the top 10, I have the Bears trading up with the Jaguars to grab pick 5, where the Jaguars sit at pick 10. At pick 17, I have the Texans trading up with the, I want to say, Cincinnati Bengals. There's been a lot of talk about the Texans wanting to trade up in this year's draft. I think they want to land themselves a cornerstone franchise tackle, and I think 17 is a good spot for them because I do believe the tackles in this year's draft class will be flying off the boards. The Bengals, of course, they go to 25. I think it's a great spot for them, especially with them adding more draft compensation to their team, and they have a desperate need to add more bodies to this roster, especially defensively, with given all of the money that's spent on our offense so far this offseason, right? And at pick 28, the Detroit Lions. I got the Giants trading back in the draft. We'll get into that pick later, but you may feel where I'm going with that selection. All right, let's begin. Keep things short and simple with some of these picks, right? At number 1, I think it is easy without question. It will be Cam Ward. The Titans have a desperate need for quarterback play, right? There's no way, in my opinion, that Mike Borgonzi and Brian Callahan tried out Will Levis to begin the football season. Yes, they brought in a veteran quarterback this offseason, but nevertheless, though, the pickup will be Cam Ward. Moving on to pick 2, I think it is Travis Hunter, right? There's a lot of talk prior to this last month or so, maybe these last 2 months, of potentially being Abdul Carter, especially post-combine, but the more you hear about Andrew Berry, the more you hear about their owner, they're aggressive. They want to make a statement in this draft, right? And I think they can land themselves one with a dual threat athlete and Travis Hunter who can play both sides, corner or wide receiver. But Andrew Berry during the combine, he spoke heavily about how they believe that Travis will bode well as a receiver in the NFL. They plan on playing him on both sides, right? And a lot of his teammates, future teammates, potentially Denzel Ward, most notably, have spoken about how they would love to see him play both sides in the NFL. So I think Travis Hunter's a pick right here. And the Browns, outside of Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku, they have a need for playmakers offensively for whoever the quarterback is going to be this upcoming NFL season. All right, pick 3. Now, once upon a time ago, this could have been a great spot for Shedeur Sanders, but I don't believe so anymore, right? I think Shedeur Sanders will fall in this year's draft class. He may even be available in the second round, depending how things go in the real draft. But in my draft, I won't have him go past the second. I won't have him go past the first. I'm sorry. But at pick 3, I think it's either between Abdul Carter, and I think they're seriously considering possibly trading down. I know they've been talking to the Jaguars, but the Jaguars are not willing to give up more compensation because the Giants, I'm quite sure, are asking for a future first round pick. I don't think that's enough I think that's too much for the Jaguars to give up just to go 2 spots up. Yes, you could potentially land a generational pass rusher, but at the same time, you don't have a need for pass rusher for the Jaguars. Neither do the Giants, but at the same time, they're about to have an elite blue chip prospect that's landed so happily in their lap. I think Mason Graham is an opportunity right here too. I think D tackle 2 may just be more important than on their roster from a need standpoint than edge rusher. But like I said, Abdul Carter at this point in the draft is the best player in this year's and the best player on the board. And Kayvon Thibodeau, they're not picking up his 5th-year option as of right now. And why should you? So respect to him, but I think Abdul Carter will be better. All right, pick 4. I think it's Will Campbell without question. I think this is going to be the sweet spot for Will Campbell. Now, of course, some things could happen where the Bears could trade up to pick 4 and grab Ashton Genty with the selection, right, and make the Will Campbell sweepstakes really crazy. I think he'll be a Jaguar if he's there at 5. But nevertheless, though, I think Will Campbell is the pick right here. Mike Vrabel has spoken so heavily about how he believes that Will Campbell will be the anchor in the franchise tackle for this Patriot squad. And I think he'll be a fine tackle, in my opinion, right? Of course, he can play guard at the next level potentially, right? But I think they're going to trot him out there at left tackle. I think he'll be fine. I'm not worried about his arm length. He will be the cornerstone franchise tackle piece to protect the franchise quarterback and Drake May. All right, pick 5. Now, the Jaguars originally had this pick, but I have them trading down with the Bears to grab some more draft compensation. Supposedly, it could be the Bears. It could be the Denver Broncos. The Broncos pick 20. I doubt the Jaguars want to go that low in the draft to miss out on a elite great prospect, right? Unless someone falls like a Will Johnson. But nevertheless, though, I think the Jaguars are cool being at pick 10 if they were to trade, right? And the Bears. I mean, Ryan Poles says he's comfortable at pick 10. But I don't know who he wants is going to be at pick 10 because I definitely believe the Jaguars, if they stay put at pick 5, Ashton Genty will be the pick. Why? He's a playmaker. He's a ball player. He's an elite blue chip prospect. He can be a difference maker to the Jaguars offense to pair alongside Trevor Lawrence and, of course, Brian Thomas Jr., right? But I think at pick 5, the Bears, obviously, it could be a luxury pick for them. Ashton Genty will be a great addition to the offense. You'll have Caleb Williams, Ashton Genty, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet. Hey, man, that's a lot of good options for Ben Johnson to work with offensively. All right, at pick 6. Now, the Raiders have been in talks of potentially trading down, but it hasn't been as popular and as smokescreen, as you can say, in comparison to the Jaguars, right? Wanting to trade down from 5. I think right here is a good spot for Armand Mimbu, tackle out of Missouri. The Raiders had, a solid offensive line last year, but with the possibilities of Colton Miller potentially not getting a contract extension, they got to find a way to bring in a young tackle to come in and play alongside him or opposite side, wherever they want to do. I think as of right now, he'll play right tackle, but he very much well could be the left tackle for this team going forward in the year 2-3 from now. So, I think Armand Mimbu will be the selection at pick number 6 for the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, at pick 7, I'm going to go ahead and pencil this one in, right? Mason Graham to the New York Jets. He has been speaking quite heavily in a sense about potentially being a part of Aaron Glenn's defense, playing alongside Quinnen Williams, right? I think that'll bode well for his career. There's talks about teams not really feeling Mason Graham anymore because of him not testing at his pro day, right? He didn't participate in the combine. All he did was just work out. And teams want to see, how Mason Graham tests number-wise, given how he plays on the field, right? Fast, twitchy, a technician. But they want to see that number on their testing boards, whatever. And I get it, right? Because you want to see how a smaller, not ideally built D tackle can fit in your scheme, rather if it's, of course, via film, measurables, and how you test. So I get that. But I think it'd be a great addition to the Jets defense and, pretty much solidifies their defensive line, right? You'll have Quinnen, Mason, Jermaine Johnson coming off the ACL injury, and, of course, with McDonald on the opposite side as edge rusher. It's a good front four to work with. All right, at pick number 8, Jalen Walker is heavily considered right here. You also could look at someone like Tetairoa McMillan. I think the Panthers love both. But I think they go Jalen Walker. They had the worst defense in football last year. And I think Jalen Walker would be a great piece to this defense for them to work with. He's a disruptor. He's going to be a very fine edge rusher and inside or outside linebacker, however you want to use him in the league. I think he'll be a good chess piece to use defensively. He's like Frankie Louvu on steroids, and we all know how great Frankie Louvu was for his defense before he left with the Commanders in free agency last year. So I think if they can bring in Jalen Walker, he would definitely be a great piece to work with going forward defensively. And he's just a guy that you want on the field at all times. And I think the Panthers definitely need that, especially given their moves they made so far this offseason, right? They improved the secondary a bit. They brought in some help for Derek Brown on the defensive line. And I know they would love to have Mason Graham right here. And you possibly could see them trade up for Mason Graham, even at pick 7 or 6. But I think Jalen Walker is a good second piece for them if they miss out on their first option and Mason Graham. All right, pick 9. This is where things get really interesting, in my opinion, because there's a lot of chatter about the Saints possibly going Shedeur Sanders right here. But I've also heard that they don't like Shedeur Sanders, right, from what we read from Todd McShay, Adam Schefter, and many other draft analysts. You could see Tetairoa McMillan right here, right? Don't think so either. I think they're leaning more towards an offensive line or edge rusher, which makes sense for guys such as Kelvin Banks Jr. and Michael Williams. But they recently did not pick up the 5th-year option for Trevor Penning. And understandably so, right? He has not lived up to his billing as a first-round pick. I want to say, back in 2022, 2023? Nevertheless, though, he hasn't been good, right? I think Kelvin Banks Jr. makes a lot of sense right here. He's projected to play guard, but you can have the flexibility to play him as a right tackle, in my opinion, because you drafted Talisi Fuaga last year. You're going to kick him back outside, given his health. You know what I'm saying? He's back in the fold. So I think a great spot for Kelvin Banks Jr. is at pick 9. And, Texas isn't too far from the Bayou. So I locked that in for Kelvin Banks Jr. at pick number 9. All right, moving on to the Jaguars pick now. They were able to trade down with the Chicago Bears. They gained pick 10. They still have a top 10 pick, which is good for them from a draft standpoint. There's a lot of value on the board, right? You're looking at Tyler Warren, Will Johnson, Matthew Golden. Offensive pieces I'm leaning more towards. Colston Loveland, Tetairoa McMillan. Even someone like, if they want to go do tackle still, they can go Walter Nolan, right? If they want to go Kenneth Grant, they have options, right? They could go a safety right here, Malachi Starks. I think they lean more towards offense. There's not a tackle you would take right here outside of Josh Simmons, and I think they'll be okay when they're taking the tackle right here or a guard. I like Tetairoa McMillan. As in my mock draft I dropped on YouTube a few nights ago, I had them getting Mason Graham at pick 5. I wanted to be a different than my other partners on the podcast with me, with Aaron and Tony. And then also just recently on my TikTok and Twitter mock draft, I had us selecting Kelvin Banks Jr. off a trade down, right? Because that seems to be what the hot topic was yesterday. But with this staff, the Jaguars have in place now, man, they've kept a lot of things close and tight nip, I guess you can say, right? And out of all times, you finally hear some rumblings 40 hours, 24 hours before draft night. This could all be a smokescreen. They could very much well stay at pick 5 and select Mason Graham. But I think the offensive position is true for them, right? Because in my opinion, no one's trading up for Mason Graham. So why are you that antsy to move down? I think the trade bait is obviously Ashton Genty. They moved down to pick 10. I think T-Mac is the pick right here, man. I'm going back to what James Gladstone and Liam Cohen talked about during the pressers. They want to be able to help out Trevor. They want to score points, and they want to be explosive. They want a bold pick. I think this is a bold pick, regardless of how you feel about T-Mac. He's a damn good receiver. I have him as a wide receiver 4 behind Emeka Ibuka and Luther Burden III, and of course Travis Hunter. But nevertheless, though, in the right system as a wide receiver 2, I think this is a fine pick for him. If you look at the other wide receiver 2s in the league, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, right? I think they bode well as a 2. Now, bring him in as a number 1, you don't have to. You have BTJ, but as a number 2 wideout, I think that is great for him, especially in Liam Cohen's scheme. So give me Tetairoa McMillan at pick number 10 for the Jaguars, and my final pick up for the Jags. All right, moving on, pick 11. The Niners have been very interesting throughout this whole entire process, right? They've been kind of quiet, too, alongside the Jaguars and Rams, guys that come from that no top 30 visit tree, right? According to a lot of prospects currently in Green Bay right now, not too many players or prospects have spoken to the Niners. Checks out, makes sense. So where do they lean? I think they're going to go corner at this pick. Jahdae Barron, according to Daniel Jeremiah, is the best cornerback in this year's draft class, giving his health, tape, so on and so forth, and what he's produced within the last year or so. And a lot of teams feel that as well, to the point that he's even mentioned that potentially the Jets could take Jahdae Barron at pick number 7. I think it's a selection right here. Rather if it's going to be a big nickel or an outside corner, I think it'll be a fine pickup for this Niners defense, and they have a need for secondary help. And I think Lenore on one side and Jahdae Barron on the other side is going to be, something good to happen for the Niners secondary going forward. All right, pick 12. Now, the Cowboys and Jerry Jones have made it known they want to go offense with this pick. They have a wide receiver on the board right here, Matthew Golden. He's going on a visit. He spoke heavily about how he's enjoyed his time in Dallas. They need that difference maker to play alongside CeeDee Lamb. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Matthew Golden from a production standpoint. I get what the film says on him being open majority of the time, so on and so forth, right? But the quarterback not getting him the ball. I like his 40 time, and his charts check out to him, being very sound and fine in the NFL, potentially a bona fide wide receiver 1. But I'm a big production person, right? But as a number 2, alongside CeeDee Lamb, where CeeDee Lamb works in the slot or your X guy, and you have Matthew Golden as your wide receiver, I think that's good for them. And I think that'd be a great pickup for the Dallas Cowboys. All right, pick 13. The Dolphins are very interesting. I've heard a few rumblings from what I've read from the draft analysts, Todd McShay, Adam Schefter, all the guys out there, right? Albert Breer, that there's a possibility that the Dolphins could go tackle right here. But, since especially with the post-retirement of Teron Armstead, but, they love Patrick Paul. Not a big fan of Patrick Paul. I thought he was terrible in time we saw him last year, but nevertheless, year 2, let him develop. And Austin Jackson is coming into his own 5 years later. But maybe 4 years later. I may be being a bit exaggerant. But regardless, though, Chris Grier, the general manager for the Dolphins, during his presser prior to the draft kicking off, he is pretty much signing off on Jalen Ramsey no longer being with the team pretty much soon. So Will Johnson, right? Even though there's been a lot of talks about Will Johnson possibly falling in the draft, if you want to replace your current CB1 with a bona fide CB1 when healthy, when on the field, I think Will Johnson's an ideal selection right here. They could go tackle, they could go safety, but I think corner will be a better option for him because I think at this point in the draft, he's the best player on the board, not named Tyler Warren. They don't need a tight end. I don't think they'll go tight end. All right. Speaking of Tyler Warren, let's go ahead and put this right here to the Colts. Pick 14. Sometimes elite blue chip prospects fall down the board. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of him. I know the draft people say, but I think he's arguably tight end 2. I think Colston Loveland's better, me personally, right? I think he's a more complete package. And I think Tyler is a bit of a gadget guy, right? Not the best blocker. I feel like his route concepts were very basic in Penn State, given his workload. But nevertheless, though, he hooped, and he hooped when it mattered most, right? So I like Tyler Warren here. I think he could be even more developed on the Shane Steichen. This fits the mold of a Shane Steichen type tight end, the Dallas Goedert type, the Zach Ertz types. He likes these type of tight ends, right? We've seen them time and time again in Philly with these type of elusive and electrifying potentially tight ends at the NFL level. And I think this would be a great weapon for them to add to their offense. And they had need for weapons, right? I mean, Michael Pittman Jr. was struggling last year at times. Josh Downs. I'm sorry. I said Isaiah Downs. Where did Isaiah come from? Josh Downs, Adion Mitchell, right? And the quarterback play was horrendous last year, and it may be horrendous this year, but at least you have a safety blanket for whoever is behind the center come week 1, right? All right, Falcons. They got to get an edge rusher. I mean, they need an edge rusher bad. Mike Williams is on the board. Now, I don't believe Mike Williams is the more talented one. I think Mike Green and, of course, Donovan Ezeuruku are a bit more talented. I'm going to give the pick to Mike Green, right? They need a pass rusher, a guy that has had 17 sacks. Now, of course, the off-the-field issues are apparent with Mike Green. Now, he's been very outspoken about what he's went through. I'm not going to get into the details at all, but he did have an essay on his, rap sheet during his time in college. Of course, he is claiming that he is innocent, so on and so forth. And I think he may have gotten, the final wording as being innocent, or he wasn't charged at all. I'm not sure, but he has some off the field issues, and they're saying he may slide because of that. But Raheem Morris, he needs an edge rusher bad, right? This defense needs an edge rusher, someone that can get after the quarterback. And I feel that's a broken record at this point. The Falcons need edge rushers. So I think Mike Green will be the selection if they're okay with everything that may come with him. All right, moving on. Pick 16. I think this is the spot where you can see someone like Walter Nolan coming off the board. I like what Jonathan Gannon has done so far and adding pieces to the defensive line, right? They brought in some depth up front. They also just signed Josh Sweat, and they still have guys like David Robinson, I want to say, or I forgot the edge rusher from Missouri a few drafts ago. He's healthy now. You're going to have Collins still coming off the edge, right, as that, edge outside linebacker type role. And you still have a few other pieces, right? But I like the potential of Walter Nolan solidifying that front four. I think this would be a great selection for them right here at pick 16. And he's a damn good D tackle who may be the best D tackle in this draft class 3 to 4 years from now. All right, at pick 17, I spoke about it pre-beginning of this draft. You got to go tackle right here for the Houston Texans. They have a bunch of makeshift tackles right now, right? Josh Simmons. He's coming off a pectula injury, right? Something involving his knee. Very serious injury, but, they said that he's going to be ready by week 1. He'll be at training camp, so on and so forth. He's progressing along very fine. That's great to hear. Make it happen. That'd be a great pickup for the Houston Texans. And also, like I said, they may lose a few 3rd and 4th round picks to grab this guy. But, hey, if you believe he's the best, and many people out there are saying that he is the best tackle in this year's class if it wasn't for his quote-unquote immaturity and injuries, which I'm not sure how immature he could be. Is he like just being a class clown, or he just acting a fool in the locker room? Nevertheless, though, he's a damn good player. So I think that'd be a great spot for him at pick 17. All right. More offensive lines coming off the board. Grazer Bell for the Seattle Seahawks at pick 18. Now, he projects as a guard. He plays tackle right now for North Dakota State, but he's the best guard, arguably, in this class. At first, I had Tyler Booker, but Tyler Booker has gotten a lot of down talk on him not being as versatile as a Grazer Bell. You have Clint Kubiak coming over there with his West Coast scheme, wide zone scheme. So I do believe Grazer Bell fits more of what Kubiak wants to do offensively, and of course protect your new franchise quarterback, I guess you can say, and Sam Darnold. So, all right, pick 19. This is where you can see another cornerback coming off the board right here. For the Buccaneers, they have secondary needs. Maxwell Hairston is an option right here. He projects more as a nickel, but he's been getting a lot of draft buzz. You could see him, but you haven't seen any of the safeties come on the board. Yes, they have Antoine Winfield, another young safety they drafted last year, but are any of them outside? Is the young one better than what Nick Imrory could possibly be, or Malachi Starks? I'm at a crossroads, but I'm going to lean more towards. You could go inside linebacker right here too, Jahai Campbell, but I think Jahai being a bit banged up is going to hurt his draft stock a bit. So I'm going to go corner, right? This may be a surprise of the draft. You've been hearing a lot of talks about Maxwell Hairston going late first round. What about mid first round? Pick 19 to the Buccaneers. He can try out outside corner, however you want to toss it up. But I think Maxwell Hairston will be a fine player in Todd Bowles' defense. All right. Pick 20. Now, there's a lot of conversations where the Broncos could potentially land in this year's draft class from where they're picking standpoint. We've been hearing that they want to trade up as high as pick 5 for running back. Ashton Genty. They love Marion Hampton. They could go receiver right here. What do you value more for Bo Nix in his offense? Run game or wide receiver? It depends. It really depends, man. I feel as if, here's my thing. I feel as if they're that aggressive and trading up all the way to pick 5, 15 selections up to lose future draft assets. You're right. You're probably going to lose your second this year, maybe even a 4th this year, and next year's first. It's a lot to go up for Ashton Genty. And I understand Ashton Genty is arguably the best running back in this year's class by a mile, and he could be a top 5 running back, top 10 running back as soon as week 4 hits the league, right? So I'm at a crossroads right here. Oh, man. Man, this is tough. I want to go Luther Burden right here really bad, but I'm gonna go. Oh man, this is tough. This is tough, man, because I love Amarian Hampton. I think Amarian Hampton is a damn good running back, man. I think he's the second best running back in this class easily. Oh man, I don't know what Broncos fans leaning more towards. I'm gonna go Amarian Hampton, man. Give them a running attack. Ease some more pressure off Bo Nix. Find him a receiver in round 2. The luxury with this, though, this is a luxury pick, right? I mean, I'm sorry. The benefit of this is a luxury pick, right? Because they did a phenomenal job in bringing in offseason talent on defense to improve that side of the football, and of course, bringing in weapons offensively. Just one in Evan Ingram, most notably, but they're going to add more in the draft. This is a deep RB class. I love to mention that, of course, because I think this one can be generational. But at the same time, don't skip out on the elite ones to go for someone that could be just solid on the back end, right? I don't want to hear position value when it comes to some of these prospects, right? Yes, it matters, but when it comes to getting the best player at that said position, don't overthink it. And I do believe at this point in the draft, Amarian Hampton is the best running back. And I'll get into how I believe the third best running back is in the 4th later in this mock draft. I think one of them should still be there. All right. Pick 21. Now, I've been hearing a lot of talk about Shedeur Sanders here at 21. We all have, right? He's been speaking about it himself. He could be a Brown, he can be a Steeler, or a Giant. I think that's where his draft board falls, even a Saint possibly, right? But, man, I found it really difficult to I mean, you could go David Harmon right here, another tackle, or Kenneth Grant for the Steelers. But they need a quarterback bad, bro. They cannot risk the possibility of Jalen Milroe being there in the second round where you have the Browns and possibly a Giant. Well, not in this mock draft at least, but in real life, right? The Giants possibly being there early in the second round, because if they're there, they're going to grab either Dart and Milroe early, right? Do you want to put your trust into Tyler Shaw? Or Shaw, however you say his last name, 25, 26-year-old quarterback already? I think Shedeur Sanders makes a lot of sense right here, man. Just go ahead and draft him, right? This team necessarily, in my opinion, isn't ready to compete now for a championship from a talent perspective. But, well, I can't say that because I want to be respectful, because you have Watt, Minka, DK now, George Pickens, who may be traded for a draft competition to possibly get back in the second round, right? But they have a roster to go on a run and give him Mike Tomlin's coaching ability, right? Definitely got the first round at least. I mean, I think Shedeur Sanders can get you a first-round playoff win if he comes into the league hooping. I mean, why not, right? The defense is going to be sound again. They're going to have offensive weapons. I think it happened. And given how Mike Tomlin always gets the best out of his roster, if he can get to the playoffs with a 9-8 record with Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, and whoever the quarterback was this past year, Russell Wilson, I'm sorry, and Justin Fields, he can do with Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion, unless Shedeur Sanders is turning the ball over left and right. I think Shedeur Sanders will be the pick right here, and I don't see Aaron Rodgers being a pickup after the draft. So grab your quarterback right here. I think it will at some point. Why not in the first round? Possibly trade George Pickens or whatever to get more draft picks. We'll see. All right, pick 22, Colston Loveland is a pick right here. Tight end out of Michigan, heading to the LA Chargers. Familiarity with the staff, of course, Harbaugh. And Justin Herbert needs a wide receiver. Man, I'm sorry. Well, he needs a wide receiver for sure to play alongside like McConkey. Yeah, Mike Williams now, but he needs more offensive weapons. And I think Colston Loveland will provide him a big target, a legitimate receiving option, and he may have himself his George Kittle and Colston Loveland. Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, however you want to split it, right? He's definitely going to have, arguably, in my opinion, within the next 5 years, a top 5 tight end at his disposal. All right, pick 23. The Green Bay Packers. We've been hearing receiver, edge, and cornerback as the top choices right here. You have Michael Williams. He's falling down this draft board for me. I'm not really a big fan of him. I think he may go higher than this on draft night, but, I'm not a fan of his. You have a receiver possibility, but does Luther Burden the third? I think he does. But Emeka Buka, does he scream wide receiver one, bona fide wide receiver one, or does he scream we already have this in our receiving room? Same thing with Luther Burden, right? I think Luther Burden III is a bona fide one, but Matt LaFleur may view him as another Jaden Reed or Romeo Dobbs or a whatever they have in the room right now. Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed, Miko Hardman now. He will be better than Miko Hardman, of course. Christian Watson, you get what I'm saying, right? They have a lot of guys. But do any of these guys say and scream one? I've heard Jaden Higgins could go round one. Doubt he goes that high. But right here, I'm going to go edge rusher. They have a need for edge still. They have a need for receiver too, bona fide receiver one wise, but maybe you could see a Steelers Packers trade. The Packers give up a second round for George Pickens. That'd be great. All right, that'll be fun. But I think Michael Williams will be the pick right here. Play opposite side of Rashawn Gary, and you figure out what you have in Luke Van Ness. They still need to get out to the quarterback, right? And they were pretty bad at that last year in crucial moments. Pick 24. Not thinking twice about it. Malachi Starks to the Minnesota Vikings. They have a need for safety. Harrison is getting older, right? So go ahead and draft his predecessor and Malachi Starks, and Brian Flores has another young safety he can mold into potentially being all pro. Like he almost had one in Javon Holland. So great pickup for the Vikings. All right. The Bengals are on the clock, right? I have them going from 17 to 25. They got some more picks, of course, in the back end. But right here, you're in a sweet spot for a lot of talent. You have Shamar Stewart. You have Tyler Booker. You have Nick Emenrory, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, James Pierce Jr., if I haven't said him already, Jahad Campbell. This is a great spot for them, and they need defense, right? They have a need for defense. Now, of course, I think potential-wise, Shamar Stewart is going to be a fine player in the NFL. I'm not crying too much about his lack of production in college, but I get the hesitation behind him, so I understand that. But who is the best player on this board without just going off different mock boards, right? I think the best player on this board arguably is James Pierce Jr. Truthfully. When you look at the guys remaining, I think James Pierce Jr. is the best defensive player on the board, right? I think he has an insane pass rush motor. I think he has great bend. He's extremely fast for his size. He has 6'5", 245. He's going to be a problem. And if you can have him opposite side of Trey Henderson for at least 1 year, I know for damn sure the Bengals should be able to get off the field on third and longs instead of giving up big chunk plays, right? And you're going to have somebody to chase after the Lamar Jacksons, right? After the potential Jalen Milrose in the conference, in the division if possible, right? Shador Sanders, if he's there, or Jackson Dart, whoever the quarterback is in Pittsburgh, and also throughout the AFC, I think James Pierce Jr. will be a great selection for the Bengals. And, just in case they move up from Trey Henderson after this season, they have some guys stepping into this place after year one. So that would be a great pickup for the Bengals right here. And I do see James falling a bit, but not too far where he's at the second round, where he's in the second round. And who knows, he may be. But if not, I think the Bengals be a great spot for him. And, they got some good draft picks from that trade up or trade down with the Texans. All right, pick 26. I think this is a great spot for Jahad Campbell. He's a player that I love a lot. His game is going to be really good in the league. He's a fast, twitchy, sideline-to-sideline backer, inside backer with great IQ, a tackling machine, just an overall. One of the most complete inside middle linebackers we've seen coming into the draft. Probably since Roquan Smith. And I say that because linebackers rarely go in the first round. We haven't seen one go in a very long time. I think Roquan Smith may have been the last one. Right? It may have been Devin White, but nevertheless, though, it's been a very long time since we've seen a linebacker go round one, if I'm not mistaken. Inside one at that, not an outside, an inside one. So I think Jahad Campbell has all the juice to be phenomenal the next level. Get healthy. He may come into the season on the PUP list, but regardless, though, I think once he's off the PUP list, he'll be fine in Sean McVay's defense to play alongside that amazing front four they have that's young and going to be around the league for quite some time. All right, pick 27. The Ravens are on the board, and I'm looking at Tyler Booker. This was my original mock. I had Tyler Booker right here. They could go edge rusher. They could go corner. They could go receiver. But I think they really want to shore up their offensive line to really solidify themselves as a great front for Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to work with, right? I think Tyler Booker fits the scheme more than others in the first round, a downhill, you know what I'm saying, Todd Monken type scheme where he can be versatile and just, get the best out of the guard play from Tyler Booker. And, Tyler Booker has gotten so much love when it comes to his presence on the field and off the field. He's a team captain. They say he's one of the best players from a personality standpoint this year's draft class. And I think it's going to be where he may have not tested well, right? But he ends up being a fine player in the league, right? We have seen the Ravens, do these things for players, right? Mark Andrews didn't test too well. They still drafted him in the third or second round, I want to say. Orlando Brown Jr. didn't test too well. They still drafted him in the second or third round, one of those two, right? They don't really care too much about combines. It's about what your film says. And the film says Tyler Booker is going to be good, very good in the right scheme. And I think he does fit the scheme of the Baltimore Ravens. All right. As you can see, I have the Giants back on the board, right? And we've been hearing all about this potentially. Is it going to be Milroe or Dart if the Giants trade back into the first? Man, it's tough. I originally had Milroe. I know Milroe wants to be in New York. He's been speaking very highly about them. He loves it over there. He wants to play alongside Malik Neighbors. However, in my opinion, I think Joe Schoen, Brian Dable can't go too much of a project with this pick. And I think Dart is more of a safer choice, right? Supposedly, Mara, the owner, has been stepping back and letting the guys up front decide on what goes on with quarterback. And I think if traded back into the first, lose a few picks regardless, maybe even package up Kayvon Thibodeau to the Lions, right? That'd be interesting to get back into the first. I think Jackson Dart and Abdul Carter, round one haul in, will be very fine football. All right, the Commanders are next up on the board. Edge rusher. They have a need for edge rusher. I think their defense did a really good job of turning things around last year in crucial moments, especially in their playoff push. Their NFC championship push, championship game push, I should say, with Dan Quinn. Dan needs to find an edge rusher. Shamar Stewart makes plenty of sense right here. Like I said, the production won't wow you, but he's an elite run stopper, in my opinion. And I think in the right system, he will blossom as a pass rusher. He wasn't terrible in pass rush win rate last year, right? I think he was around one of the league's best in college football. He just couldn't get up. He couldn't just get the sack. Okay, that's how it is sometimes, right? Some of the best pass rush win rate players in the NFL aren't your sack leaders, right? Some of them are, but some of them aren't. For example, Josh Hines-Allen this past year only had like 7 or 8 sacks. Didn't lead the league in sacks by any stretch of the means, but he was one of the best players in the NFL with a pass rush win rate. So I think Shamar Stewart will be fine. Just get some more coaching under his belt. And he's going to be a really good player, in my opinion, right? Look at the Trayvon Walkers of the world. Look at the Danielle Hunters of the world that didn't produce much in college, but got to the pros. Danielle Hunter, for example, blew up. Trayvon Walker, for example, has been getting better each and every year, right? Went from not getting enough sacks in college to having back-to-back 10-plus sack seasons. You get where I'm going with this. And I think that'd be a great pickup for the Washington Commanders at pick 29. All right. Moving on. Pick 30. Pick 3-0. Kenneth Grant to the Buffalo Bills, defensive tackle out of Michigan. I love this pickup a lot for many reasons. One being that one of the tackles the Bills picked up in free agency this past offseason, forgot his name, is facing a 6-game suspension to begin the year. Ed Oliver needs some help up front. I think Kenneth Grant would be an amazing Robin to the defensive front for this defense. You have Kenneth, Ed, Joey Bosa, Gregory Rousseau, and AJ Espinoza on the rotational defensive end front. Whoa. Man, that's some good push up front for the Buffalo Bills. And it may project them or get them over the hump when it comes to knocking off whoever they potentially face in the AFC Championship, rather if it's the Ravens, Texans, Chiefs, right? Who knows? But Kenneth Grant would be a great pickup for them at pick 30. All right, 31. 31. This is my wild one right here. Travion Henderson to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I personally have Quinshawn Judkins better than Travion Henderson, but the word is that a lot of teams believe that Travion Henderson projects as a do-it-all running back. I think a lot of fans are getting behind this as well. The Chiefs have met with him. They love him. I think that's a great spot for them potentially if they decide to pass up on an offensive tackle right here or a defensive lineman in Derek Harmon. But they want to go running back, right? If they want the quote unquote next Jahmyr Gibbs, which I think is a very lofty expectations for a guy that hasn't been as durable so far throughout his collegiate career, football career. But who knows, right? He is a 3-down back. He's without question explosive running back from a just running the ball standpoint. He's a great receiver, and also he is an amazing, probably the best pass pro running back in this draft. I think it'll be a great pick for them. We'll see how he does in the league. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the best running back, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being just an okay guy, right? And a guy that just can't get out the ice tub. So we'll see. And at pick 32, Nick and Rory could be the pick right here. But, man, they did lose Milton Williams, and they have some solid safeties in the back end. And, you know, they did trade away Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, so this is a great spot for him. And I've also seen Todd McShay draft Mason Taylor right here, tight end out of LSU. But I'm leaning more towards Derek Harmon. I think he'll be a great pickup for them right here to replace Milton Williams to play alongside Jalen Carter. Keep that defensive line, front four, elite, and, you know, not have any delay of play. All right, that'll do it. That is my final mock draft for the Chill Taste podcast. I thank y'all so much for tapping in. I will be doing a how can I say this? Because I probably won't drop a podcast tonight after round 1. I'll probably drop a podcast before round 3, round 4 through 7 start, right? Want to soak up rounds 1 and 2 because those are 2 big nights. And of course, Saturday from 12 to 7, it is filled with, you know, 4th and 7th round picks. So I'll say my reaction then, and then I'll do a full draft recap afterwards, and I'll give my, you know, best drafts, worst drafts, so on and so forth, and who surprised, who didn't do much at all, who reached, so on and so forth. So, you know, I'm excited, man, regardless of what happens to any of our teams, regardless of who you root for, man. It's a very exciting time, and I like to say this time is arguably better than the Super Bowl, depending on who your team is, right? So, new players on the way. And it's fun to see the guys you've been following throughout the offseason so far, the guys you've been watching film on, highlights on, are just, you know, really becoming fans of potentially being on your football team and taking your team to the next level. So, anyways, man, thank you so much for tapping in on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment down below your thoughts on the draft. Who should your team draft? Who you think is going to be an overdrafted pick? Who's going to be an underrated draft pick? So on and so forth. Happy mock draft. Happy NFL draft. I'm sorry. Happy NFL draft season. It is finally here. Thank you so much for tapping in. Until next time, that is a wrap. Be safe. Have fun. Enjoy your time with your people, your friends when you watch this draft. And don't get too emotional if your team doesn't make a pick you want them to make. That is it.